Welcome all in, everybody, to another edition of the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. I'm Zach Farmer. That's Thomas Dunn. We got a lot to get into, recapping the weekend, previewing what is the final week of the WCC regular season. Only a couple of game days left before, well, it's time for Vegas. The WCC tournament is nearly upon us, so we will start to look at, because honestly, like, I'm thinking about the seeds. We're going to get into that because we still don't have a ton that's been decided to this point. So we'll talk about what's left to decide, what some of the tiebreakers may look like, who has what left, and get into all that. Before we get started, be sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you are listening to the podcast. And we're going to start off with, honestly, what was the biggest game on Saturday, and really was one of the more lopsided games on Saturday, and that was Santa Clara blowing by USF on the Hilltop. And it was shocking to kind of just see how this game went, especially when it didn't feel like Santa Clara didn't necessarily play their best all the way through, and this was just really one-sided, especially in the second half.
Yeah, there was a lot of, man, I've sure seen this before. Santa Clara gets up double digits in the first half at War Memorial. Don's called timeout. And then Santa Clara doesn't execute at the end of half. I'm like, well, I've seen this movie running about 3 or 4 years on and on. But, you know, in a certain sense, I kind of agree with what you said in the sense that the Broncos didn't necessarily play their best. I think that was more geared towards the end of the first half, and their way their offense kind of process kind of just broke down a little bit. But I love the intensity, actually, that Herb Sendek has came with, not only in against USF, but in this season as a whole. I think that's kind of been a noticeable, I guess we'll say, uptick, so to speak. He's brave, a little more, I guess, in the battle, so to speak, on the sideline, and it's really noticeable, I think, to some of the players and some of the guys. And then in the second half, yeah, you mentioned, I think Santa Clara just kind of screwed themselves in gear and made a lot of shots every time USF tried to make a mini run or mini burst. Santa Clara responded right away. I thought Cherry Darlin had a big game in the shot-making department. Christian Hammond had a huge first half. Jake Ensminger was all over the glass. And, you know, I think amidst everything, you'll take the win against USF, obviously, if you're Santa Clara. But the hard part is that they lost Alan Graves a few minutes even into his first stint with an ankle sprain. And they're trying to figure out whether it's a low or high, and we'll see if it's how that affects things going forward against St. Mary's. But that's a big deal going forward. And I had to put in Francis Chukadebel at third string center. Did all right. Had 4 fouls. Can't roll him over. And Broncos eventually one going away at the Hilltop amidst a very we'll say very dense Bronco red crowd that had made their way up there, as they usually do year in, year out.
It was a good showing for Santa Clara from the crowd. Did see the photos and the video of the students that made the trip up on in the buses. I mean, you mentioned Cherry Darlin. I saw, one of the highlights there, and Herb Sendek pointed it out in the post game. Saw the video, like the no turnovers, 15 points, no turnovers for Cherry Darlin in that game off the bench. Like arguably maybe his best performance of the season when you think about the 0 turnover mark plus the double digit points. But of course, we can't go much further without talking about Elijah Mahi's night. Player of the week, 30 points in this one. And I feel like I'm thinking about just the impact that he's had all year long. And he's been probably their most consistent player all season, but he hasn't had that, maybe those couple of those breakout games that we saw last year, where it was like, oh, like he was the one who jumped off the page. Because Santa Clara's been so balanced, it's Christian Hammond one night, we've seen it from Bretton Napper another, Alan Graves another. It's been bounced around, and Mahi just like consistent. We know like his impact, we know how good he has been, and on Saturday this was this is the guy that we were thinking about going into the season for the Broncos.
And to the tune of a career high in those 30 points, had to get it at the very end, right before the shot clock expired. And yeah, I really Other than really one small stint in the end of the first half, I really enjoyed the way he paced himself, the way he played with force throughout the game more than anything. And I thought he was really in control of his tempo for the most part, which I think that's one of his characteristics in his game that I think that does stand out when he is having a good one. He's not really sped up or anything like that. And I thought that was on full display against the Dons. And you mentioned the balance game over game when it comes to Santa Clara. I think I'm in pretty big agreement that Elijah Mahi, tends to fly under the radar in that department when people are humming on other parts. And I think this is one of those games where you finally saw him. It's like, I'm just going to go get my buckets, and there's really nothing anybody can do to stop me. And it's going to be a real intriguing chess match on Wednesday in Moraga whenever he faces either Dylan Shaw, Polis Morauskas. I'm intrigued to see kind of who gets deployed compared to the first matchup and kind of how he can kind of operate amidst a very good Gales defense, as we all know.
Yeah, we got that matchup on Wednesday night. Santa Clara heading to Moraga to take on St. Mary's, and St. Mary's held serve as well on Saturday as they took care of Washington State and pulled away late in that second half. They won 83-67 at Beasley Coliseum. Josh Dent just jumping out with 17 points in that first half, 22 for the game. And we also saw another solid night from Polis Morauskas, 17 and 12. And Mikey Lewis, second straight game with another solid one, 16 points, 2 for 5 from threes. It feels like we're starting to see the St. Mary's team. It feels like they're a little bit more consistent now. They did hit a little bit of that lull offensively right around the time when they played Gonzaga, and probably one of their worst performances on that end of the floor all season long. Because going on the road, we know is a challenge. Like, it's no way about that. You think about what St. Mary's did a couple nights before in Seattle, and how they were really pushed, really challenged on the road at Climate Pledge Arena. And they came out a couple nights later against Washington State, and that was a really solid performance by them in the second half. They just kind of kept Washington State at arm's length kind of the rest of the way. I think we talked about Reeve Avers having a potentially big night, or what he was going to bring in this game. He still had a decent night, 12 points, 4 for 7 from the field, but only 4 attempts from the 3-point line, which really meant that St. Mary's was making sure that he was not able to get those clean looks and get it off as quickly as he has over the last few weeks. And St. Mary's, again, they're holding serve, and they are really the team right now going into this final week that kind of holds their own fate in their own hands, because they are the team that hosts both Santa Clara and Gonzaga this week. And if St. Mary's is somehow able to win them both, they can win the league, or at least share a title with Gonzaga, I should say. They need Gonzaga to also lose again to be able to overtake them. But this week is going to be the big one, because we have not decided first place. We have not decided second place. We have not decided third place. And Gonzaga, St. Mary's, and Santa Clara are all still in the mix. We are going to see the two of them face off on Wednesday, and we'll get to the Zags in just a bit to talk about their game against Pacific. But this matchup between St. Mary's and Santa Clara this time around, I mean, Santa Clara got them round one, and that was a game where it was almost kind of like the flip of thinking about where it was. We talked a lot about how St. Mary's had kind of flatlined Santa Clara in years past, and it was a game where, actually the opposite happened. It was Santa Clara flatlining St. Mary's for a good chunk of that second half. But kind of talk about a little bit of like what maybe you saw on Saturday from St. Mary's, and what's at least like a jump out key for this coming Wednesday.
Yeah, and really in that first half, I thought Harry Wells actually had a really good start to the game. Obviously, it didn't necessarily continue, so to speak, in a certain sense. But I thought on a rewatch, I thought he actually looked pretty good to set the tone in the game, work the interior. I thought Mikey Lewis played a smart game. Above all, I think that's what stood out. He didn't necessarily force too much of anything, and I think the more that he's getting into this natural rhythm without having to force it, I think all the more better for it. I liked what I saw in the extended minutes from Rory Hawk, and kind of similar to the Santa Clara USF game. It's like, well, those fouls don't roll over, so just keep using them, because I mean, usually we're so accustomed to seeing Dylan Shaw go in the distance and playing heavy minutes in the high 30s and stuff. But, with Randy Bennett heading towards Rory Hawk in this matchup, I thought he did a pretty solid job, all things considered. And then call it the Josh Stitt on the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast effect, potentially, maybe. I don't know. But he really saved St. Mary's bacon late in that first half when they were a little bit dysfunctional. And then Washington State, while still continuing to throw those jabs for like the first 10 minutes of the second half, then St. Mary's galed them to death over the final 10 minutes, but not without some theatrics. I will. It's still etched in my brain when Randy Bennett gave me probably the funniest timeout signal I've seen all season. Late in the first half, where he just went like this, just like a buzz saw. He's like, you know what? I'm done. I want timeout, and that's how I'm going to signal it. That was really funny to me, just in general. Really, aside from the game itself. But when I look deeper into it, I thought St. Mary's really set the tone those final 10 minutes and just said, no, we're not doing this again. Kind of like in Moraga, where Washington State kind of made that comeback, and it was like nip and tuck a little bit for those final 10 minutes. We're like, no, we're going to suffocate you. You're done. We're done here. And that's exactly what they did, exactly what they needed to do. Getting into Wednesday, where they have almost everything they want right in front of them. They're going to need the Fighting Shantae Leggins and Portland Pilots to kind of do that magic once again. But other than that, they have just about everything they want right in front of them. And at least for me, how I view Wednesday, it's kind of a de facto NCAA tournament play-in game. Like, this is these two teams. Like, you get this one on Wednesday, you feel a hell of a lot better about yourself. And that's not to say it's impossible for the team who does lose, but it just makes it that much harder.
It does. One more note on the Washington State St. Mary's game. Washington State, we know, one of the better 3-point shooting teams in the country. They were 7 for 12 in that first half, 0 for 7 in the second half. So St. Mary's really putting the clamps on the 3-point line and making them put the ball on the ground and try to do it from inside the arc. And as we saw, that was not good. That was not a winning formula for the Cougs. But you're right. Like, it's going to be basically a play-in game. To an extent between these two on Wednesday. Now, I will say that based on what we have seen with some of the bracketology and what's out there at the moment, St. Mary's still is in the better position overall. And I know that that might sound confusing because Santa Clara has beaten St. Mary's this season, but you look at all the metrics, you look at where St. Mary's is. I mean, there's a lot of brackets still has St. Mary's as a 9 seed, not right on the bubble, but kind of safely in still at this point. Now, they lose to Santa Clara on Wednesday. That could wildly change what we're looking at, because then Santa Clara, obviously, they're looking at 2-0 against St. Mary's. And I think the committee would be harder pressed to, if it's one or the other, to keep Santa Clara out if they have swept St. Mary's versus putting St. Mary's into the field. But I do think, like, if Santa Clara does lose this game on Wednesday, they're the team who's going to be really sweating on Selection Sunday. Now, of course, they're probably going to get another opportunity against either St. Mary's or Gonzaga, if not both of them, in Vegas. But you almost don't want to go into Vegas with that pressure on your shoulders. Like, it is winning time. It is that time of year where you do need to prove it. And luckily, they'll probably get a couple more shots to prove something, but you don't want to have that resting on your shoulders going in to a tournament setting, because who knows? Because as we know, there might be another Pepperdine wave come rolling through the Orleans Arena one last time, as we saw a year ago in that building. But I think this is more. It's still more critical for Santa Clara to try to get this one, because even if St. Mary's doesn't get this one, at least they have another opportunity on Saturday night against Gonzaga. Like, at least they're home for both games. They'll have two. It's one quad 2, one quad 1 game coming into UCU Pavilion, and because obviously Oregon State is coming into the Levy Center to close it out. And while that's obviously an important game, you still need to get it if you're the Broncos. That doesn't carry the same weight of, like, oh, you lose to St. Mary's but rebound against Oregon State. It's no. If you want to feel safe going into the WCC tournament about your NCAA tournament chances, you got to win them both this week.
Yeah, and I think, to kind of clarify, when I say playing game, I think St. Mary's, like, a win Wednesday, I feel like locks them in. I think it's just about there. They're on the precipice of doing so. And when I compare them to Santa Clara, they just have the higher leverage, not necessarily in the head-to-head yet, but, like, they just have the higher leverage from the body of work and the way things have kind of shaken out, especially on their resume. I think I would probably dub their worst loss of the season to be Boise State at this point. And, that's oh well, it's Boise State. They're a respected team, all things considered, despite what some of the metrics may say about that loss in Zach's favorite place of Idaho Falls. But when I look at the matchup Wednesday, I really think the biggest question mark is what Herb Sendek does if Alan Graves can't go. Like, that to me is a very interesting thing, because Buki Aboye is out there, and he'll fight on the interior, plays on the interior, but giving up a lot of mass to Harry Wessels and Andrew McKeever. Okay, let's say Buki Aboye gets in foul trouble. That has happened quite often this season. Alan Graves is someone who could pull Andrew McKeever out of the paint and shoot threes. He's someone who can go off the dribble a little bit. He can kind of back down the smaller guys and kind of force maybe Randy Bennett to throw a Polis Morauskas on him. He's someone who he kind of like tweens in the middle between being a 4 and 5 and can kind of really change the game from that department. And for me, when I look at the Broncos matchup against the Gales, it's, does Herb Sendek go with the third string center Francis Chukwutabel? Because then it almost becomes reductive. You just have another big beefy body against Andrew McKeever, and McKeever kind of wins that battle quite often when it comes down to that. So I figured, does Herb Sendek go down that road of trying to stay big, or does he go 5 out? Because he closed it with a 5 out lineup at USF. He put Cherry Darlin and Jake Ensminger as like the big guys underneath. So I'm really, really intrigued to see what happens if Alan Graves can't go. I know they're still trying to figure out what level of ankles sprain that is for him right now. And when I look at the Gales matchup, I really want to see Polis Morauskas, hair on fire, like, I'm not letting us lose for St. Mary's. Because I think when we talk about Santa Clara flatlining St. Mary's, they did it with the pressure defense in the first matchup. And I thought Polis Morauskas was a little flustered and we didn't feel him. And I think that's two of the things right there immediately you want to see. How does the Gales take advantage of potentially no Alan Graves? And how does Polis Morauskas kind of say, you know what, I'm putting the team on my back after Josh Denton has saved my bacon a couple times, after Mikey Lewis has saved my bacon a couple times. Polis Morauskas says, I'm not going to lose. And I'm really intrigued to see how both of those dichotomies kind of play out.
I mean, looking at the last time these two played, I mean, this game was, I don't think we'll see a very similar type of game, because it was 62-54. Neither of these teams shot it well from distance or from really anywhere in that one. Obviously, Christian Hammond had a great game. He had 25 the last time out. But you're right. Like, Polis Morauskas, 8 shot attempts in that last one, 12 points, 10 rebounds. Obviously not a statistically, it doesn't look like a bad game, but you want more from your player of the year candidate. You want more from a guy who is very capable of just throwing the team on his shoulders and carrying them. Especially when you look at, again, the shooting nights that some of the other guys also had that night. Mikey Lewis 1 for 11, Josh Dent 3 for 13, Dylan Shaw 2 for 9. It was not a good shooting night for St. Mary's from anyone. And that is I wouldn't expect it to happen in this one. And I mean, St. Clara didn't have a good shooting night either. They shot 40% from the field as a team. I wouldn't expect that to happen either. This is one, it's the way these two teams have kind of played of late, and the fact that the offenses seem to be clicking a little bit better. I could see this going into the 80s for both teams. Like, this one we could have a bit of a track meet in Moraga, which that would be kind of new, especially involving St. Mary's, to have a little bit of a track meet between these squads. But I think the defenses, while they played well, I do think that a lot of it was just there was some missed opportunities, missed shots from both squads. So I would fully expect that the offenses are going to look much better in this one. And even like look up and down through what Santa Clara had. Like Jake Ensminger with a 0, like Brent Napper 0 for 2. You have like Elijah Mahi with only 8 points. Like, yeah, none of these numbers scream like this is going to happen again. Like that game was the aberration to what we're used to seeing from both of these squads. So come Wednesday at UCU Pavilion, I fully expect this one to. I think this one's going to go down to the wire. This is Santa Clara's play-in game. Like, they win this, they're probably locked in for the tournament. Like, I don't think there's like understating how important this game is for Santa Clara's chances. Just so that you can't take that breath yet, because you still got to beat Oregon State in a couple nights. Like, you win on Wednesday, you still better win on Saturday to close the deal. Because then once you get to Vegas, you're almost set at that point, because then you also are going to be at least the 2 seed going into the tournament.
Yeah, I was literally about to say, oh, what if they just win Wednesday and then lose to Oregon State? I'm like, thanks, Zach. Thanks for doing that. But yeah, no, I'm in full agreement of Santa Clara. Especially when you look at the way the committee looks at the mid majors and like the power conference dynamic, is you have to create your own leverage. And winning Wednesday would damn sure create some of your own leverage. And while acknowledging that some of the bubble has fallen Santa Clara's way over the course of the last weekend, you just got to keep building that leverage, because we know the benefit of the doubt is not going to go to a Santa Clara or a St. Mary's. We've seen it in the past where, you see where, oh, here we deserve to be an X spot or Y spot, and then it's like they're like not so fast, and they pull a fast one on us. So really intrigued to kind of see how that plays out in the level of intensity that both teams bring, because like you mentioned, I don't think the Levy Center game is really representative of the. I don't even want to put a percentage on it, but maybe like I don't even know if it was 70% of what these teams can bring on any given night, especially on the offensive end of the floor, like you mentioned. So what does Josh Denton do? Because that's a game where he was like less effective. Where Mikey Lewis, that was when he was going through his offensive dip, as you mentioned. For Santa Clara, what happens? Can Christian Hammond find a way to continue to replicate that 25-point performance? I know he got to the free throw line a little bit in that game, but like, can he find a way to continue to make use of that floater? Because I think that's a really underrated thing, a part of his game against St. Mary's. The 7-footers want to invite you to block their shot on a layup, but when he's shooting the floater, pulls them out just a little bit more, maybe get a backside cut or something like that. So just all those little things and all those little intricacies and matchups, Randy Bennett and Herb Sendek, boy, I'm excited. I'll be there. I'm in Moraga in a couple years, so I'm really intrigued to see kind of what happens between both teams, who becomes a tone setter ultimately, and then who finds enough winning plays down the stretch. But I really think the effectiveness of Josh Dent in this game will be a key. I think the status of Alan Graves is going to be a key, and then I think the last key I have is who is going to be that unsuspecting guy that kind of pops up out of nowhere. It was Tony Duckett the first time around. And on Saturday, Tony Duckett was in street clothes. So I'm not so sure if we're going to see Tony Duckett in the break glass in case of Duckett emergency once again from Randy Bennett, and similarly for the Broncos. I don't know. Who's it going to be? Is it Cherry Darlin going to make waves again? Is Sash Gavaluga? I'm not so sure that this is a matchup for him, but we'll see. But we know that both these coaches are going to throw everything they have out there on Wednesday.
And we will be this game on Wednesday, and we'll get through the full slate. We will be doing our regular Saturday morning live this week. Guest TBD on that one, as we'll preview what's going to happen on that day. We'll recap Santa Clara and St. Mary's, and then preview what St. Mary's taking on the Zags. And the Zags are coming off a game where it was dicey there, at least for a little bit. Pacific had it tied 29-29 at the half at the Kettle. And it just never felt like they could completely shake Pacific throughout the course of this game. And I think you give Pacific a lot of credit for just kind of making sure that it was kind of life was difficult. This was one of Graham EK's more challenging games. I mean, he still had 20 points in this one, put 8 for 21 from the field, 0 for 6 from 3. They made it more challenging for Gonzaga in this one, but as the Zags do, they found a way to kind of pull out, win 71-62. And I mean, there were some wild numbers in this game that just felt like, how was this game even close? And somehow, some way, Pacific just kept making it interesting.
They did, and I think when I take a step back on this game, and we talked about the weirdness when it comes to playing these teams one time this late in the season, I think Pacific is a really tough team. I think they've challenged Santa Clara, they've challenged St. Mary's. Despite not getting the victories, they have absolutely challenged those teams and delivered a similar challenge to the Zags. And you mentioned Graham Ike and getting that 20-point performance, and not all 20-point performances are created equal. He started the game 2 of 8. He was like, it was nip and tuck for a lot of the Zags. And really, the guy who's probably and should have gotten the game ball is Davis Fogel. There goes that man, Davis Fogel, once again for the Zags, eventually providing that kind of, I will say, like, he injected a little bit of energy into the game, eventually ended up with 18 points. I think that, to me, especially off the bench, when you're in a game where it's just like, it's laborious, you're like possession by possession, just want to scoot away before it ends up turning into a high leverage game where you could almost stomach a bad loss, because the Zags did not play well in that first half. It was like, it wasn't repulsive by any stretch of the imagination, but it definitely was not firing on all cylinders. And that's a massive credit to guys. I thought Justin Rochlin had a great game for Pacific, and that one eventually netted a double-double in it. And especially as Pacific, another game where you had to navigate Elias Ralph being the focal point and everybody knowing it. And one of the times where he got in foul trouble, kind of had to maneuver around it a little bit, but a massive credit to the Tigers for fighting for the most part, and getting into a high leverage game from their perspective. And for the Zags, it's like I'm going to look at Davis Vogel. I'm going to look at Graham Ike's down the stretch play more than anything. I thought where he took over and eventually fouled out Isaac Jack. I'm like, yep, this is exactly what all big time players need to do. And both Chris Gerlison and Herb Sendek mentioned in recent games. I mean, he's playing at an All-American level. It took some time to get there in this one, but at this time of year, you're just trying to win. It's exactly what they did, despite some rough shooting in spurts.
I mean, another guy like we talked about in the last episode, and another good night for him. Emmanuel Innocente continues to play really well. In addition to Davis Vogel and everybody else, third straight game in double figures for Innocente. He's shooting 57% over those 3 games. I mean, it was like the shock when he had that run against St. Mary's and had double digits in that one. But now he's done it against Santa Clara. He's done it against USF. He's done it against Pacific. He is starting to be a little bit more of that, more of a reliable offensive option for the Zags. And yeah, it's small sample size. You can say that that's what it is, but it's coming at a time when they've needed him. And he's been able to come through. Obviously, he comes through on the defensive end. He's always been able to do that. But now he's able to stay on the floor more because he's giving you that offense. Last 3 games, 39 minutes, 36 minutes, 34 minutes of play in these 3 matchups. So Innocente really coming through for the Zags in this one. Thinking about, like, the Zags shot 36% in that first half. They shot 50% in the second. And yeah, Pacific shot 54% in that first half. Again, like, they were doing a lot of things well for a lot of this game. And then the Zags were able to just kind of muscle their way to the win. Gonzaga had only 4 turnovers in this game. I want to note the fact they had 4 turnovers and Pacific had 15. And this was a close game basically until the end. There was, again, like, there was some random lopsided numbers where it's like, huh? How is Pacific still in this game? They were +4 in the rebounding column. They
look at the points in the paint. I dare you. I dare you to look at the points in the paint.
Ooh, the points in the paint, 34-20. Pacific. What? That is such a mind-boggling number to then lose that game somehow. But all that aside, I mean, Pacific is now in a position where they have slipped out of 4th place because Oregon State took care of their business, handled their business against Pepperdine on Saturday. And so now they have flip-flopped in the standings. They are now sitting in the Beavs, that is, are sitting in 4th place at 8-8. Pacific has dropped to 8-9. They are now in 5th place. And even though they both lost on Saturday, Washington State and USF are still right there behind them. So we are getting, again, we talked about 1, 2, 3 haven't been decided. Well, 4, 5, 6, and 7 haven't been decided either. And we only have a couple of game days left, 1 week left in conference play. I mean, I was just starting to map out what those different scenarios are for these 4. And I do think that when I watch these teams, that Oregon State and Pacific have, it seems like they've separated themselves from Washington State and USF. But when you look up and actually see where everyone is in the standings, not quite yet.
Yeah, and we'll say I have an order up for a 4-way tie for 4th place. How about them apples? Because that is still on the table, and I will absolutely sign up for USF playing Pacific. And if the Dons beat Pacific, that gets Pacific to 10 losses. Dons would have 10 losses. Oregon State goes 0-2, they'd have 10 losses. Washington State goes 1-1, they'd have 10 losses, and then we'd have a free-for-all at 8-10 for 4th place in the WCC. I will default to the conference office as they like to untangle that knot. Shout out to the homies back over there. But I mean, that for me, it's just when we talk about a mess entering this season, I don't know that we could have ever predicted this level of mess. Like, yes, we knew that the top 3 relatively would be up to that part, but by this much separation, and now with this much tomfoolery happening this late in the season from 4th and beyond, I don't know that we could have predicted this. And boy, oh boy, I think this next, we'll call it a week and change. I mean, what else can you define it as other than an absolute madness?
I can, if you want more madness, I can give you more madness because just went to look. because the 8th place team, Seattle, if they sweep their games at LMU and at Pacific, guess what record they'll have? They will also be 8-10.
Oh boy, wait a second. I don't know about that Seattle U schedule, man. Let me take. At LMU, at Pepperdine. All right, that's doable. That's doable.
Yeah, it's like we get real nuts before going into Vegas.
Yes, we can. And that's not to say, imagine a world. It wouldn't happen this way just because by virtue of everyone playing each other. But it's not like Portland, LMU, and San Diego are too far behind in that department either. They're not going to make up the difference. But still, I do find it funny that it's just kind of like a sandwich, and it's just all like right here in front of us. You got all your different levels of all these different teams trying to shake each other up and get up the totem pole. And I mean, when we could predict a 4 seed right now, and we could be totally wrong. Like come Wednesday and Thursday, we'd be like, nope, they lost. Nope, not going to happen. That team won actually, so we're going to be quite all right in this department. So I look at all this as fun as the first place race is, and rightfully so. This 4th place one, I'll tell you what, there's some good comedic value to everything that's happening. Just because just right when you think you know something, you get the chair pulled out from under you.
They split with both Oregon State and Washington State, but both USF and Pacific hold the tiebreaker against Seattle. So it would be a bit of a uphill climb, even if Seattle were to somehow win both their games and be able to tie them. They probably are still going to end up down at that 8th spot because none of the other teams are in danger of kind of slipping behind. Now, again, thinking about those matchups that they have this week, Oregon State, last 2 games versus San Diego, at Santa Clara. Pacific and USF, they each have one game left, and it's against each other at Spanos Center. Washington State at LMU, at Pepperdine. On the surface, seems like 2 winnable games, but of course those are road games against 2 teams who are still trying to cling to the idea they can get out of the cellar, get out of that bottom tier, because LMU is still in play to get out of that group as well. Because there's also how many teams are tied in 9th? 1, 2, 3 themselves down at the bottom. So we have nothing, absolutely nothing decided in this league, and we have just a week left.
Nope. And you mentioned trying to get out of that day one stretch of games in the WCC tournament. I mean, LMU, you can't really quantify a sense of desperation that they have, but I've kind of seen it over the course of the last few games, and all without Jalen Shelley, no less, for the Lions. And look, Zach and I can each give you a prediction with the most informed analysis and statistical backing up that we could ever have for what we think will happen between 4th and 11th. And the answer is we will positively get less than half of them correct, because these teams just, if nothing else this season, they know how to beat each other up. Like LMU swept USF. I mean, Washington State, Seattle U, they split each other. Portland will randomly beat Gonzaga and throw a wrench into everything. So it's like, for all of us, it's I don't want to say it's a fruitless exercise, but it sure is a damn funny one when trying to figure out what is happening between 4th and 11th. I'm really intrigued to see kind of what Oregon State does, because they've been playing better on the road as of late. I know, acknowledging the Seattle U game, yes, that was not good, but before that, the Beavers have been playing a lot better on the road, and you have a big road game at Santa Clara to end the regular season. Be interested to see how that plays out. Pacific haven't played well at Spanos Center throughout the bulk of this season. USF have been very wobbly on the road. I think initially into the season, I'm like, USF, they need to beat Pacific if they want to be in 3rd place at the start of the season. No, it's like, no, Pacific has the leverage and can definitely beat USF and then some if the Dons aren't right. And I look at Washington State, you're like, okay, a Southern California road trip, but we don't know what version of the Cougs is going to show up. Does Seattle U have enough offense to show up? So every single team has a question. Every single team can prove us wrong, prove us right, do everything else in between in their pursuit of 4th place.
4th place and 11th place are separated by 3 games. Obviously, we don't have 3 games left, so whoever is down near the bottom, we're not saying that they're getting all the way up, but there's still a chance that any of those teams could still climb out of that day one hole and end up in the 6th seed. Like, that is actual possibility for one of the squads that are down there if they play well this week into the final week of WCC play. And it is a wild wild just kind of scenario that we're starting to see all across the league right now. So, I mean, I want to say that Oregon State, like, to me, is probably the one that's going to end up with that 4 seed. But if Pacific wins its one game and Oregon State splits its 2, which is very possible scenario, Pacific's the one with the tiebreaker. They swept Oregon State. So I want to, like, a team in orange and black will be the 4 seed. How about that?
What a bold prediction from you. And as soon as you say that, it's going to be Washington State. I hope you know that. Like, it's just going to be that way. So yeah. Zach is on record somehow pulling 2 cards in this, and I can't believe he's going to get away with it. So let it be known, and direct all inquiries and fury to Zach Farmer, please.
That's indeed. I will take it. We'll definitely get into that. Oh, and now one thing, we're going to start prepping for the week, because we know that all the awards are going to come out very early next week. We got to start working on our awards list and start picking those teams. All right. Like, we can kind of discuss the whole, like, 10-person first team or whatever else. Like, are we going to be gentlemen about this and do first team, second team?
You know what? I'm down to go the old fashioned way and do first team, second team. And I think that, it really lends more into our brains and kind of how we operate and what we think defines like an all conference player compared to the 10-teamer. So when we get to that point in the coming days, we will let you know about all that. But I can spoil one pick for you. Graham Ike will be my player of the year. That'll, even regardless of Saturday, I think that's I don't know if foregone conclusion is the right word, but he has definitely a leader in the clubhouse.
How dare you? No, that's the only right answer. That is the only right answer in my head. But yeah, that's Graham Ike. That's probably where it's going to go. But I have been wrong about that before. So
I have too. I have too.
So we will get into that throughout the course of the week. I mean, you look at the matchups that we have. I mean, just this coming week. I mean, we talked about the games in general about what's coming up, but very specifically this week. I mean, staring at that San Diego Oregon State game, like, Oregon State, it's a must win for them, because I think it's going to be that much more of a challenge come Saturday against Santa Clara. Thinking about Seattle U at Pepperdine, of, like, we've seen Pepperdine actually play a lot better the last couple of weeks. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Pepperdine's going to just roll over, and I don't think they will. Like, it feels, this is the team. It's like, they just need to get by Valentine's Day, and they're ready to rock. They're ready to play some basketball. This team just knows how to turn it on, apparently, in the back half of February.
The back half of the back half. Hey, season starts now, or season has just started now. If you're Pepperdine, I am intrigued, though, when you look at, because there's always one team every year in the conference tournament that just kind of, they ascend above what they were expected to do, and even relatively common to their seeding, like not to the level of what Pepperdine did last year, but like you'll see it just a team kind of take off a little bit. I think Washington State, they were looking good for a quick second last year, then ran into USF in years past. They're looking good. You think, oh, this could be the year they take down the Zags in Vegas to get close. They don't ultimately end up doing it. Like, for me, I'm trying to think of, like, those individual players who could just light up the night inside the Orleans Arena. Aaron Clark, I think that's a guy who can light up the Orleans Arena rims. Braden Maldonado, that's a guy who I think can light it up. I think going forward, and in this last stretch of games, I'm really intrigued to see kind of some of the individuals we look at and are like, look, you let them go, and they get hot. Like, there's a world where they can change the tune of the team, even if it's just for a couple extra days. And I look at those two, and Ryan Beasley, it's obvious what he does. Ace Glass. I mean, imagine Ace Glass in Vegas. Yes, please. Like, sign me up for some of that. But just in general, there's a bunch of individual players who can go off on any given night for any of these teams and can really change the course of, maybe not necessarily the whole season, but just kind of have a feel-good moment to cap off the year. I mean, we can't rely on Elias Ralph. I think he's been one of the best ISO scorers in this league so far this season. So those are just some of the names that immediately pop in my head of, hey, let them get hot. The Joel Foxwell show going to Vegas. You never know.
I'm going to drop in a Rodney Brown, an MJ Amy, and I'm going to drop in a TJ Wainwright on that list too, because we've seen some big nights out of all these guys with the bright lights, the stage in Vegas. We have seen guys just rise to the occasion. I mean, I love me some Mo Odom and what he was able to do a year ago. much to the chagrin of Thomas and what he did to the Broncos a year ago. But they're just some guys that just they step up in the moment in Las Vegas. They just put on a show in front of that crowd, and some guys just need that environment. But we just rattled off a list of again, the guys who aren't Gonzaga, St. Mary's, Santa Clara, who can absolutely take over in this tournament. And it wouldn't surprise me if any one of them made a run to the semis. Wherever we're definitely going to pick somewhere like from seed line 6 and below, who's the team who's going to make that run. But of course, gotta wait to see who the hell that's going to be. And we will probably be waiting all the way until next Monday when we do an episode to find out who exactly that is. And I mean, we're in the final week. We're 1 week away from Vegas. I'm excited to finally say we're almost at the finish line. It's going to be a lot of fun the next couple of weeks. Thomas will be in Moraga for Santa Clara St. Mary's. I will be in Moraga for Gonzaga St. Mary's on Saturday. So we'll be there for this final week in Moraga, catching what is going to be just, I think, barn burner after barn burner this final week.
1,000%. And if you couldn't sign up for anything better, I think when you still have despite Gonzaga having a lead, they still have to take care of their own business and trying to see everybody else take care of their own business over this next week or so. I mean, it's exactly what you sign up for. We've got the hotel reservations in Las Vegas. We've got the plane tickets. We're ready to go to the WCC tournament, ready to get there for a few days and go cover this. We'll call it the grand finale of this chapter of WCC hoops.
The end of a big chapter of WCC history comes to a head in Las Vegas in just a little over a week. All right. Well, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Be sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you are listening. Follow along on social media at unofficial WCC pod. That's Thomas. I'm Zach. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we will catch you later.